We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day's going well. It is Wednesday. We're midway through the week, and we have the good fortune to have Eric with us on the show. It's not as frequent because your work schedule has changed some. We're not seeing you as much on the live, so I thought this is a good time to bring Eric back and get some of the Iowa wisdom from the analytical Iowan. Check him out on YouTube and TikTok if you haven't already. It's been a little while since we've talked, Eric, and every time I watch TV in the morning when I get up, just try to catch up, if see if anything important happened, like some Republican tragedy of some sort. I would love to see that. Haven't seen it yet, but it just seems more ridiculous every day. I mean, the fucking ridiculousness of this is incomprehensible. How would we ever imagine it would get to this stupid state?
Oh, I have no idea. And I'm glad to be back. Yeah, my work schedule's changed a little bit. So I'm working a lot later nights now, which has affected my to do my own lives versus and jump in, but I'm still trying to jump in when I can. But how we got here, I have no idea. Like I've said it before, Hollywood couldn't script this as a movie or a TV show or anything. Nobody'd believe it. Nobody
You,
would believe it if
you would
we
be
had a
laughed out
normal
of the
president.
place. Yeah.
Yeah, if we had a normal president whose administration tried to do any of this, like on a TV show, they they'd say it's too far fetched, it's too far gone. Even right leaning Republican people would say it's a bridge too far, but they're not getting the whole story. They don't know half of what's going on either.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
it gets ridiculous.
One of the things I want to talk about first of all, before we get into the stupid shit that Republicans do, um, is this book that Jake Tapper put out talking about how there was some um, cognitive diminishment by Joe Biden, and it was hidden and all this stuff, and it just it's just another distraction. Like I've said before, okay, maybe there was, maybe there wasn't, but what difference does it make right now? I mean, it tells us one thing: if Donald Trump is not diminished, Joe Biden diminished did a better job than Donald Trump has done.
Right. And I think part of this with this book coming out, like it was always going to be in the cards, no matter who won, that this book was probably going to come out around now.
Yeah.
Um, but it's trying to embarrass Joe Biden.
To
It's
what point,
trying,
though?
well, to take the heat off of Donald Trump.
Wow.
Well, that's the effect it's doing. The book was meant to sell some books, make some money, and probably embarrass Joe Biden a little bit. But they're making a big deal out of it to take the heat off of all this the stuff Donald Trump is doing. Him coming out and saying he's going to tariff the country of Mattel, and him having to be redirected to the right spot in the room in Saudi Arabia, and him forgetting to sign the executive order. He was in the Oval Office, got up, walked away, had to be tapped on the shoulder, and said, "Donnie, you didn't sign it. Go back."
Yeah.
It's to
Yeah.
distract from his obvious mental decline. That's why they're making a big deal.
But now that we find out that Joe has this aggressive prostate cancer, does that kind of rain on that attempt to use Joe uh, as a distraction? I mean, you're going to beat up on a guy who has cancer now? I mean, they're trying to say, oh, he must have had this for 10 years, and they didn't tell us. Well, one doctor on TikTok pointed out, you motherfuckers need to listen to what's going on before you open your mouth. They said it was an aggressive cancer, aggressive prostate cancer. That means it could happen in days and kill you in days. If he'd had it for 2 years or 5 years or 10 years, it wouldn't be aggressive cancer. He'd be dead by now.
Yeah, they're not listening. They're just trying to again spin it into some big scandal because they want to use it as some kind of a, well, see how bad the previous administration was, especially when it comes out, because it probably will come out at some point in the future, that Donald Trump is suffering from some kind of cognitive decline, dementia, Alzheimer's, something. there's it's going to come out that people knew about it before he was elected, and they want to say, "Well, see, this happens in politics all the time." They're setting up their excuses.
Yeah, well, I think Donald Trump's main ailment is he's terminally stupid. I mean, he says some ridiculous things, and to me, this tells me he's feels backed in a corner. Like earlier today, he said something about the big beautiful bill. A couple of things. He went down to Congress and said, I don't want you to cut Medicaid, but let's pass that big, beautiful bill. Clearly, he hasn't read the bill. Clearly, he doesn't understand it. And of course, the Republicans don't know what the fuck to do. They'll just do whatever they want to do. But then he said this, he said, I think the bill should only affect red states, not blue states. The cuts should affect the blue states and not the red states. That sounds like a president for the people, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, definitely, 100% for the people. And if you didn't know, there was a lot of sarcasm there. Um, the cuts when they come in, it's going to be all based on criteria: income from this, age from this to this. There's no way to separate it from blue unless they specifically write it in that the cuts only apply to people from California, from Illinois, whatever. And I don't see that happening because you're going to get even Republicans from those states that are in those, because there are Republicans from California and Illinois, whatever. They're not going to vote for that because they got to get reelected. If the cuts are going to affect them, why would they vote for it? The whole thing is dumb. He doesn't know how politics works, never did. And he was able to ride his first term to so much success because he left shit alone and just kind of coasted. He's been fucking everything up since he got reelected this time, and it's only going to get worse.
Oh, the thing about it is that we've got this big, beautiful bill, and Republicans talk as if it's a foregone conclusion that it's going to pass. I don't get that impression at all. They got two problems in the Republican Party. They got one group of people that don't like the bill because it doesn't cut deep enough. But they've also got other people that are saying, hey, I'm not going to get reelected if I vote for this thing. They're going to have a hell of a time passing this bill. And if they don't pass this bill, these oligarchs that have taken it in the shorts for with the stock market, if they don't get the tax break, they got nothing out of this deal.
Yeah, well, and you're right on those two things that they have. There's also a third thing they've got working against them with this big, beautiful bill. The third thing is they can't afford to lose any of those votes. It's not like it is half the time when you got a 30, 40, 50 seat majority a lot of times in the House where, okay, this vote for this, and I'm not going to get reelected. I can sit this one out. They can't sit it out. If they vote against it, the bill's done.
Yeah.
And for the ones that won't vote for it because the cuts are too deep, again, they can't have those people skip the vote. It's going to be if they pass it, it's going to be one or two votes tops that they get it. I don't see any Democrats crossing the aisle and voting for it.
Fucking better not.
And then the House or in the Senate, if they try to do, they're going to have the same fight in the Senate.
Yeah, I
And
think they're
they can
going to
only
have a
lose.
harder time in the Senate. I think they're going to have a much harder time in the Senate, and they're having a hard enough time in the House.
Yeah, well, they're going to try to get around the filibuster in the Senate, but they're going to have a harder time. You're right, in the Senate, even with using reconciliation and getting past the filibuster. They can only lose three
Yeah,
votes, and JD
right.
Vance can tie break in the Senate. Four, and it's dead. And I don't see again any Democrats crossing the aisle and voting for this thing. Even somebody that we've had some questions about, people like Fetterman.
Yeah.
I think while some of his other stuff is up in the air, I don't think he'd vote for this spending bill.
Well, and the thing about it is whether it's close or not, I think has a lot to do with the fact that you would hope that these people are aware enough that as soon as they sign a budget bill like this, once they vote for it, and if it in fact cuts Medicaid, they're fucking done. It's going to be brought up in the next election. People are going to be suffering, and none of them are going to vote for anybody who voted for that fucking budget bill. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they're still so afraid of Donald Trump that they'll do it anyway and hope they can float under the wire, but it's not going to work. That's going to be the biggest news in the next election.
It's going to be one of the big things. There's going to be so much stuff used against the Republicans in this next election. As long as we start keep up keeping the voters informed and keep them mad all over, they don't lull back into a fresh sense of security. And I don't think there's going to be a problem with that, because I don't think this administration is going to get anything in the next 2 years. I don't think they're going to right the ship. I think the economy is going to go to shit. It already started to go to shit. And it's not going to get better. It's only going to get worse.
Well, we were talking about this before. I don't know who I was talking to about it, but people have a false sense of security, I think, because Donald Trump backed off the tariffs with China. He didn't save anything doing that. There's still tariffs from China of 30%, which is more than it used to be. And I still haven't heard that China's starting to send ships again. And frankly, if the ships aren't coming, we're going to have a lot of empty space on shelves.
Yeah, the tariffs went from 22%, I think it was, to 30 now, which is still better than 145. But if the product's not coming in, you could put it back to zero. If there's no product coming in, what difference does it make?
Yeah, don't you feel like China is trying to make an example of Donald Trump, trying to teach him a lesson? They're tired of this fucking around back and forth. You know, China's in a really good position. Everything we're doing in this country is helping China. They're setting up new trade partners. They're setting up new deals because these people can't deal with America anymore. People in China must love Donald Trump because he's helping them out immensely.
Well, yeah, you would think. They're going to find ways to get around without us. And Donald Trump's going to continue to lose. And it's going to take a while for things to go back to the way they were after Donald Trump is out of office. Even if something happened today and we got stuck with JD Vance for the next 3.5 years, JD Vance couldn't turn it around right away. You could put Kamala Harris in there today and tell her to run the rest of that term. She couldn't turn it around probably in one term. The damage is pretty deep, and it's only going to get worse.
Well, I was telling you a story before we went on. I said my wife and I went out to have dinner, and a place we go frequently. And this particular day, it was just horrible. It was horrible. Now, even though I have a long history with that restaurant, next time I decide to go out, I'm going to have to think twice about it. Where's a better place where I can count on it being good? And the same thing can be said for China and all the other trade partners that we've had. Once they establish some trading with another country, what is it going to take to get them to come back to us? I don't think anybody's going to come back to us as long as Donald Trump's in office because they don't know what to expect. They could have a tariff tomorrow, not one the next day. Um, he's destroyed the confidence in this country that other countries have, and they're just not ready to risk it anymore. So we're going to need a new Congress and a new president before we can even start to heal that situation.
Yeah, you're right. When it comes to international trade, they look for stability. And that
Yeah.
was kind of the one thing prior to Donald Trump getting elected the first time, and even through most of his first term and stuff, we were pretty stable when it came to foreign trade. Things just kind of moved along and progressed, and there wasn't this heavy-handed attempt to do whatever this thing is Donald Trump is trying to do. I know he likes to say it's to bring manufacturing back to America. Well,
Yeah.
that doesn't work as quickly as what they say. And you got people on the right sitting there just eating it up, going, "Oh yeah, this is great. It's going to be overdone with so quick. It's going to be, we'll be making stuff here, tomorrow or whatever." It's not going to be that quick.
No, it's not. It
And
can't be.
no, so until Donald Trump threw a wrench into the whole works, it kind of just kept going. That's why the economy kept going year after year. I mean, there were some recessions here and there due to like the housing market and things like that. But for the most part, you just let it roll. And that's what these other countries want. They need to know that stability is going to be there. We can't have a toddler at the helm, you know, deciding by which way the ketchup packet lands on the wall what he's going to do tomorrow.
Yeah. You know, when you're dealing with people like Donald Trump and the Trumplafucks, I made this comparison on TikTok today. I've been listening to this Diddy trial, right? And I haven't talked much about the Diddy trial because it's out of my realm. It's not what I normally talk about. And as I listen to the stories that come out of the trial, it's so abhorrent, so horrible. I don't even want to give it a platform, but it made me realize something. We've got Puff Daddy doing all these horrific things, and there's evidence and videos that he's done these things, okay? What I find so troubling is that for decades and decades he's been doing this. And there are other powerful people, wealthy people, people of position, politics, movie stars. They all saw this happen. They all know in their hearts it's bad, but they said nothing about it. They turned a blind eye. They said nothing about it because it was better for their pocketbooks or their futures or their careers. The reason I bring that up is because that seems to be the case with the Republicans too, and Donald Trump. Donald Trump is the Puff Daddy of politics. In the first term, we saw how Donald Trump fucked things up. We saw the criminal activity that he committed. 4 years in between, we saw what he was doing. He was convicted of 34 felony charges, amongst other things. People around him, like the Scott Bessents or the Marco Rubios or any of these people, they're smart enough to know that what he's doing is criminal, but they don't care. They turn a blind eye, like in the P. Diddy case. And it's all about enriching themselves and the country and the people in this country be damned. I mean, that's a sad commentary in two different areas on um, the human condition. We're some fucked up people right at this point.
Yeah, that's kind of true there. I mean, they're turning a blind eye to it because of the level of popularity he maintained with his MAGA base.
Right.
Republicans, they realize that we're moving farther and farther left as a country. There's more and more acceptance, the racism, the anti-LGBTQ uh,
Right.
stuff is stuff we want to leave behind. At least I think the majority of Americans do. Now, Republicans, of course, will say that we're the minority, and they're
Yeah.
obviously right. But as we've talked about, they're a very vocal minority of people. They only think they're the majority because there's more of them being loud than us. Uh, but I think they see the writing on the wall, and they saw Donald Trump as a last gasp to draw in some new blood, some new ability, and hold on to that power. And when he's gone, they're screwed. So they're turning a blind eye now because they don't know what to do when he's gone. They don't know how to move past him because
So
they put everything in one basket.
it's like they know they're going to lose, but they have no choice. So it's a kamikaze mission for them, basically. And that's how it's going to end up. One thing about narcissist and fucked up authoritarian parties like the Republican Party, the one thing you can be sure of, there will come a day when they go too far, where they step over that line and there's no coming back. And this recent charges that were filed against Representative LaMonica McIver, I think they stepped too far there. They were trying to intimidate, they were trying to instill fear, trying to prove how tough they were. But when they did that, that is a problem. I know Senator Chris Murphy was talking to them and say, "You fucked up. Wait till we put you on the stand." They're claiming this young woman was assaulting an ICE officer. As I said in a previous podcast, I want that ICE officer on the stand, and I want to see the documentation that they in fact work for ICE, because I think there's a lot of people that are just hobbyists that are helping Donald Trump out, like Proud Boys and such. And if that's happening, it's not deportation anymore. It's fucking kidnapping.
Yeah, that's the thing about this case. There's gonna be a period if she's been criminally charged, they're gonna go through a period of discovery where her
Yeah.
defense counsel is gonna be able to put subpoenas in to get information. They're gonna have to announce in court filings, who the officer she allegedly, assaulted was. They're going to have paperwork showing this person. Now, is there a chance this paperwork could be forged? Sure. There's always that chance, but they're going to have to come up with all this paperwork. And a good attorney is going to be able to shred any sort of bullshit and get through to the truth. They don't want this to go through. I'm guessing what they want is for her to say something like, "Well, I'll just resign my seat and you drop the charges, and we'll let it go." I'm sure that's what they think they're going to get out of this deal, and they're trying to send a message to other Democrats. Well, we'll charge you too if you don't do what we want. And the courts are the ones right now holding the line. In this
Yeah.
case, the courts are going to hold again. They're going to be the ones saying, "Wait a minute." They're like I said, we got to this. There's going to be a whole process here, and it's not going to bode well for ICE, for this administration, for Republicans in general.
Well, I heard a story after the charges were filed. I understood that Mike Johnson and maybe some other people went to her and said, "Well, let's work something out so we don't have to go through this apology, bend a knee to Donald Trump." And from what I gathered from this representative, she basically said, "Fuck you, take me to court," because she knows this is going to be an opportunity to
Mm-hmm.
expose the stupidity. They wanted to show power, but you talk about paperwork and stuff like that. Let's look at the track record with the Republicans. They're not good when it comes to evidence or track records or paperwork. They don't think that far ahead. They just react, and they always get caught with their fucking pants down. And that's what'll happen in this case. And they should be shitting as much as any Democrat does, because I'm hearing Democrats of all type coming out saying this is fucking bullshit. Just you wait. And that's why I'm saying I think this was a red line, at least when it comes to Congress. If we wanted Congress to step up and get pissed, this would be the time they're going to do it because it's going after one of their own. And if they're successful with one, there'll be others, and they fucking know it.
Yeah, I think the Democrats are going to be unified behind her, and they're going to draw a line in the sand with this. But I still think for as much as the Democrats are going to do it, hopefully the Republicans are watching, because if Republicans don't think too clearly. Most of them don't anyway. And I hate to say this, but somebody like Mitch McConnell actually can see the big picture.
Yeah,
Uh, they got to realize if if the Republicans are successful here against a Democrat, even though the Democrats probably wouldn't do it, what's to stop the Democrats from doing it against Republicans next time they're in power?
exactly.
The line's been
Exactly.
the
And
line's been crossed. You know, they don't think like that though. They're convinced they're going to do it, and they're going to show how tough they are, and they'll be in power forever. When
well,
they're
to give you to give you an idea of how substantial this Republican effort is, when they went to that ICE detention center, the three reps that were there, one was an elderly rep, and they're saying this younger rep was trying to, keep her safe and keep people away from her because she's fragile. She's 80 years old. Um, but what really happened there initially was they arrested the mayor of Newark. Now,
mm-hmm.
they filed charges against this representative, but guess what? They dropped the charges against the mayor of Newark. They knew that was going to be a shit show. They knew they couldn't win that fucking thing. Why did you arrest him in the first place if you didn't have legitimate charges against him? And they'll probably end up dropping the charges on this rep too and basically said, "Well, we think she's sorry, so we'll let her go." It'll be something like that.
You're
They don't want to
probably
go to
right.
court.
No, but I think the reason they dropped the charges against the mayor is, I'm guessing they were afraid of getting state level charges,
Yeah.
where Donald Trump can't pardon things like that. one of these is going to end up going to court in a state level issue, and it's all going to get aired out. They do not want us to know who these ICE agents are, if they actually are ICE agents. Um, and especially in the case with the rep, I talked about the paperwork a little bit. If she's smart, she could start asking, okay, well, we need to see the financials. Where did they get the money to build this center? Where's the funding coming from? Because I know
Right.
Congress didn't approve it. They could really go deep into this. And you're probably right. They're going to want to bury this. They're just
Yeah.
trying to send a message to the Democrats. And when it doesn't work, they're going to want to back away and try something else, but still have their supporters think they're tough because they charged a sitting member of Congress.
Yeah. Yeah. It's they're big on acting tough, but when it comes to backing it up, they just have nothing. They have nothing at all. I think that we will see them drop the charges or claim something about this rep. There's no reason in the world they would even want to go to trial. There's too much that's going to be exposed. Um, but they took the steps. They arrested a judge. Now the judge, it looks like, by way of the Supreme Court, has a certain amount of immunity in their own courtroom, so they're fucked. They're not going to get anything there. They arrest the mayor of Newark. They drop those charges, and now they've got this member of Congress. I just think they're exposing their weakness by doing this because they won't be able to follow through with it, and they're all about proving that they're strong. So this is going to be interesting to see how they play this. They always have to backstep on everything they fucking do.
Yeah, they do. And they overplay their hands a lot. The problem is the Democrats are never strong enough to finish them off when we have them on the ropes. We
Yeah.
should have been able to, put Donald Trump away after January 6th. It should have been over and done with. But you had Merrick Garland in there as Attorney General, sat on his fucking hands for 2 years, and until all of the J6 committee stuff came out, went, oh well, it's political. I don't want to touch it. We had the strength. If we would have had somebody stronger in there, we could have put him away, been done with it. And Joe Biden wasn't leaning on him because that's not how what the president's supposed to do. It's supposed to let the DOJ and the Attorney General run on their own. If we would have put Donald Trump away, we wouldn't be in this situation. If we would finish some of these deals like where we could, we wouldn't be in this situation. But we'll have to see if maybe we'll get lucky and the Republicans will end up finishing themselves off this time.
Yeah, I think that's ultimately where it heads up because, they've been given a free hand to do whatever the fuck they want thanks to the Republican majority and the weak ass Democratic Party. As much as there's problems in the Republican Party, we're seeing a lot of problems in the Democratic Party. They are kind of split up too. You have the far left, you have the moderates that don't want to do anything. Um, and then you have this David Hogg coming in, this young guy who wants to primary people in safe districts. And the Democrats are losing their shit about it. They don't want their buddies, their compatriots, to lose their position, even though they're do nothing fucking people. David Hogg's taken a lot of heat. But I personally think, I don't know, primaries are the best way. There has to be massive changes in the Democratic Party if we hope to win and if we hope to accomplish something after we win. At this point, I'm not confident in the Democratic Party at all.
Yeah, and I heard they were going to look at kicking him out of that leadership position
Yeah,
because of wanting to primary everybody and say, hey, we need some new blood, new ideas, younger people, younger candidates. We need to stop running the Pelosi's, the Schumers, the Chuck Grassley's. And I know
yeah,
Chuck Grassley's a Republican, but Jesus Christ, we need to stop having these old people. We need to have people in there that do have some fresh ideas, that understand the struggles, that didn't buy their house before Reaganomics, those kind of things. And David Hogg's right. We need to start primarying out these people. Safe districts is probably the best way to go about it. because regardless, you're going to get a Democrat. Like, you can't tell me the best person you can find to represent San Francisco is Nancy Pelosi. You're
Right.
telling me you can't find any other Democrat in San Francisco who could win?
Yeah.
Get out of here with that bullshit.
Well, and somebody on the live last night said that they'd heard that she filed to run again. For fuck's sake, she's older. She's older than Joe Biden.
Yeah. Well, and didn't she say when she stepped out of leadership, she was only going to run for one more term?
Yeah.
And then she was going to retire? And then she ran again, and now she's going to run again? Jesus Christ. If you
Yeah. You
can't
know
trust
what?
her to even follow through with, I'm going to retire, can you trust her to
Yeah.
make any other decisions?
Yeah, you got to wonder. One of the things that frustrate me most, I said this last night too, about the Democrats. David Hogg comes in here and he wants to upset the apple cart. He wants to primary people and get better, more proactive, maybe more aggressive people in the Democratic Party. And I'm all for that. I think it's about time that we do that. The Democrats go hard after him. They're ruthless, trying to do whatever they can to marginalize him or kick him out. They're getting real tough about it. However, when Elon Musk goes in and fucks around with Social Security and all the other agencies he's went in and fucked around with, they're sitting there with their thumbs up their ass. They're tough when they want to go against their own people, but when Republicans do it, they just want to sit back and be passive about it. We're not in a position anymore to be passive about anything. You got to be aggressive. You got to go hard. And if you want to go after hard after David Hogg, turn some of that aggression on fucking Republicans.
Right. And that's one of the problems with Democrats. We are against our own. The number of Democrats who refused to vote for Kamala Harris because there wasn't a primary, you know, that there wasn't this, there wasn't that, you know, whatever reason. She's too close to Joe Biden. Whatever reason that they didn't get their way in their preferred candidate. Jesus Christ, we attack our own more than we attack the opposition. That's ridiculous.
But both you and I are a fan of Joe Biden, what he did, at least in the first 2 years of his term. But a lot of what happened on November 5th can be blamed on Joe Biden. And I'll tell you the two things. And I know I'll make people mad talking badly about Joe Biden. I like Joe Biden. I think he was a good president. I think when he ran the first time, I said he's not going to run again because he's too old. Turns out I was right about him being too old, but wrong about him considering running again. Um, but Joe Biden should have done what he said he was going to do and be the transitional president and not run again in 2024. That would have given a whole 4 year period to find a successor, whoever that might be, whether it be Kamala or whatever. The second thing Joe Biden did, or the Joe Biden administration did, um, was they hamstrung Kamala when she was the candidate. They wouldn't allow her to create any daylight between her and Joe Biden. So basically, she was a Joe Biden surrogate, and Joe Biden wasn't polling very well against Donald Trump. What he should have done is said, do what you got to do, say what you got to say, just win this motherfucker. But that's not what he did. He hamstrung her, and she could only say what she could say and stay in the bounds of what Joe Biden believed. And at that point, I think we established Joe Biden is a politician from another era, not this era. And had Kamala been given 3 or 4 years to do this and be able to speak for herself, it would have been a lot better for her. But these two things really made it difficult for Kamala to win.
Yeah, you're right there with that. I think if she had been able to create that separation between her and the Biden administration, but being the VP, her and administration,
Yeah.
the norm, the political thing to do, side president, you don't you separate as in ways that doesn't make your president look bad. You've got to be very careful. And all it did was hamstring her. I said at the time they should have either let Joe Biden run or he needed to resign and let her be president. Get out of the way. Let her
Yeah.
run the country and run for reelection then as the incumbent. And I think that might have been the better outcome because by that point, all the fanfare is over. Yes, it's not winning in an election. Yes, it's not, there would still be an inauguration ceremony and all this, but it wouldn't be the new administration for the first female president. But it's over. You can't say, well, we've never done it. We can't trust a woman. She held the job. She would
Yeah.
have been fine. I think I think that was the case, and it was too late in the game for Joe Biden to just say, "I'm not running." What should have happened is he either finish the race, win or lose, run it to the end. I still think he could have beat Donald Trump all the way to the end. Um,
I do too. In
or
spite of the fact he was slipping at times, other times he was fine. Donald Trump is slipping every fucking time. I think, and we talked about that too when it came down to whether Joe should step aside or not. I think both of us agreed he shouldn't. We're too deep into this at that point. He should have just wrote it out. And in retrospect, it wouldn't have made a difference. If he won, great. If he lost, well, we still lost anyway. So it would have been better logistically to let him just run it out than hand it over to Kamala with the 90 days left. That was a lot to ask out of somebody.
it was and the comparison I made, and I stole this from the news sources. They gave me the idea for the comparison, and I was looking at it, and it made a lot of sense. Was to LBJ in was it 68
Yeah,
when he decided in March he wasn't going to run, and Herbert Humphrey ran his
right,
VP ran. He couldn't get out of LBJ's shadow, and
right.
all of the negative about LBJ just transferred. I said this could be the same thing that happens. They need to create the separation. They weren't able to, even with her talking about all of the things she was going to do, the good policies she was going to do. She couldn't get away from the negative that came from being associated with Joe Biden. For those people that were dissatisfied, but the problem is a lot of them weren't dissatisfied with Joe Biden specifically. They were dissatisfied because they didn't get everything they thought they were going to get from Joe Biden because
Right.
we lost the midterms and the Republican House of Representatives wouldn't let anything through.
What do you think about this? The Democrats will tell you, well, we're going to do this and we're going to do that and we're going to make this better. And they probably could have been clear about more things. But to me, it seems like they were in an entirely different fight that the Republicans are in. You got to consider the audience. And our audience for politics right now, I will say this, at least half of them are far less sophisticated than we've ever seen anybody in politics before. They're all about the loud noise, the rhetoric, the scandals, the threats and all that stuff. That's the game that they're falling into. That's why they voted for Donald Trump. So it would make sense that the Democrats maybe need to employ some of those tactics so they're at least in the fight they're in.
I don't know if they need to go that route. I think what they need to take from Donald Trump is his talking style. And I don't mean the rambling and the weave and all of that. And we've talked about it a lot. Donald Trump speaks at about a sixth grade level at
Yeah,
best.
that's true.
I think if in a lot of times Democrats, while they are educated, they speak like they're educated. They use big words. They they speak profoundly. Um, and sometimes what happens is the independent voter and the Republican voter, their eyes glaze over when they start talking that way because they don't get it. Speak in
Yeah.
simple, easy to understand terms, short bursts that make great sound clips. And I think they would get a better engagement from the voter. They don't necessarily have to take on the entirety of the fight persona of Donald Trump. I think they could still do a lot of the attacks, but they don't have to go that full Donald Trump route. Just change the tone of their message to more to a simpler message, so it's
Yeah.
easier for people to understand. And you that way, because you and I can go, well, she said this, So she's going to do this, but then they don't have to have somebody else break it down and explain it. They can just hear what the candidate says and go, "Oh, that makes sense to me."
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what you got to do. You got to appeal to the people who are your audience and be able to explain it in terms that they understand, whether it's more simple, whether it's more rhetoric. I don't know what it is, but the Democrats come off, and it seems weird to say, given that it was usually the Republicans, they come off as the elite or the hoity-toity, which turns off a lot of people in rural communities or in the lower
Mm-hmm.
income areas. They say, "Oh, these are the rich people telling us what to do," whether it's legit or right or wrong or whatever. It doesn't matter. They just don't like the tone that's being taken with them. So we have to change that tone, at least recognize it. And as long as we have the Schumers and Nancy Pelosi's and the Joe Bidens, that tone is going to be there. We've got to talk at their level and we've got to get them to react to some of these things. The problem the Democrats had, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't think it was a bad strategy at the time, but in retrospect, it was. Their whole campaign was, look how bad Donald Trump sucks. And that was pretty evident that he did suck that much. But that strategy clearly doesn't work.
Yeah, I think what she needed to do, a better strategy would have been, while keeping up talking about how bad Donald Trump sucks and how bad it could be under a Trump administration. I think they focused too heavily on that side of it and not enough of um,
What
what the
we're going to do
policies
for
were, because
you.
her policies got lost in the message. I have heard a lot of people that say, well, all I ever heard of her was how bad Donald Trump was. I didn't hear any policy. Well, we're invested. We heard the policy. We were talking about it, but it got lost in the message of how bad Donald Trump was. I was just having this conversation with a coworker the other night, talking about 2004, John Kerry versus George W. Bush.
All right.
And for as bad as I didn't want to vote for Bush, I'll admit I voted for George W. Bush because really all I heard from John Kerry was how dumb and unqualified George W. was. I didn't hear. I somewhere lost in the message. I didn't hear a lot of his policy of what he was going to do, other than
Right.
he's bad, he's evil. That was the main message, and I couldn't throw my vote behind it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of people feel that way. But when I talk about the less sophisticated electorate, especially amongst the Republicans, Donald Trump did talk about policies and strategies. He said, I'm going to lower grocery prices. I'm going to bring down inflation. I'm going to stop wars. He didn't say how he was going to do it. He just says he's going to do it. And people say, I like that. I like that. Let's vote for that. And then, of course, when he gets in office, he does none of that. In fact, he does just the fucking opposite.
Yeah, and that's part of the other problem, where Kamala Harris was coming out saying, "Well, I want to do tax credits. I want to do first-time home buyer credits. I want to do this. I want to do this. I want to do this." And again, I think a lot of people's eyes glazed over a little bit because they couldn't piece together how it connected to lower grocery prices, lower inflation, making everyday life better for people. They didn't connect the dots, and because she wasn't, I'm not being against her. It's just a democratic problem with messaging. If she would have had that short message like Trump did, I'm going to do this,
Yeah.
that would have been a lot better. And then she still could have come out with the policies. The problem is all of it got lost in the middle. Nobody heard what she was actually saying.
This sounds crazy, but based on how it all turned out, they worried too much about substantiating everything they were saying, which is the right thing to do. But apparently, that's not what people want to hear. They want to hear whatever it is, even if it's a lie. I'm going to cut inflation in half. I'm going to drill, baby, drill, whatever the fuck it is. None of those things are happening under Donald Trump. And now people are going, what the fuck? But still, people will follow him because they believe him. I'm a firm believer that there's a lot of people in this country that are tired of government. They feel oppressed by government. They feel like they're left out by government. And all Donald Trump had to say is, I hate government too, and I'm going to fight them for you. And they jumped on board because that's the only option they had. They could either not believe him and be in the same place they are where they think they are now, or jump on board and hope against hope the guy's fucking telling the truth. That's a sad thing to say about a pathological liar that you're trusting him, but that's what happened.
Yeah, I had a conversation in that same conversation where I was talking about the Kerry election. I was talking to that coworker of mine, and he said, "Well, he's a Trumper," and he's like, "Well, the reason I voted for him is he's an outsider. He's not a politician. We have a businessman in there to run the government, to weed out all the waste." And you know, he was granted he was repeating right wing talking points, but I think he genuinely meant that he thought Donald Trump was going to be doing a lot of it, that he was going to shake things up from the top down, shake out all the fraud and abuse and figure out why all the politicians are becoming millionaires and billionaires on $175,000 a year salary. Like he really thought that this outsider was going to fix all of that, and and ultimately it was going to make things better for him and everybody else in the country. They believe it.
Well, they believe it, but if they took a minute and investigated his history, they would have to think twice about it. I mean, here's a guy who's supposed to be this great businessman. He's filed bankruptcy a number of times. His credit rating sucks shit. He can't even get a loan from a bank in the United States. So he comes in, he's in 3 months, 3 months, maybe 4 months. And in that short period of time, he's taken the credit rating of the country, as reported by Moody's, took the credit rating of this country from a triple A to a double A1. It's down one step from where it is. And that's the first time that's ever happened in the history of them taking these credit ratings. So that's 100 plus years ago, 108 years ago. So he's such a good businessman that he's fucked up our credit rating. Fuck, I got, there are ex spouses out there that'll do that for you for fucking free.
Oh, I know. Yeah, he screwed up our credit rating, which it's still a good rating, but it does affect things. In the worst thing is if uh, we have to somehow start paying back our debt, we don't have it to pay. We're
Right.
going to be scrambling trying to figure out how to pay it, and then good luck getting money from those countries ever again if we have to scramble to come up with it. They're happy with the status quo right now because we borrow, we pay back the interest, everything looks good. But Donald Trump's fucking up so bad, they're going, oh, we might not get our interest payment. This is bad, and it's making people question it. It's amazing that they still think he's such a great businessman.
Yeah, it's pretty foolish. And when you're talking about the debt we have, you're probably talking about treasury bonds. And when we find out some place like Japan holds $1 trillion in treasury bonds, if they get a little skittish and say, fuck, I'm selling out, we are absolutely fucked. And that's just one country. China has treasury bonds. Other countries have treasury bonds. If everybody looks at us as a poor risk, which we are quickly becoming, and they pull that shit out, the fucking tariffs are nothing compared to what it would do to this economy.
Uh, 1928 in the stock market crash would look like a pleasant day by comparison to what it
Absolutely.
would probably happen if they called in all of those, if all those countries called in their bonds at the same time. Oh boy, I would hate to see what would happen there. Um, he's just fucking things up left and right. But if he gets the right people around him, patting him on the ass, telling him he's a genius for doing X, Y, or Z, he'll back things off. Like somebody got to him and convinced him to lower the tariffs and to back off down to 30% with China. And he did. And now he gets to claim a win and to make it seem like he's actually doing better. Good Lord. That's all he does. He fucks up, fixes it a little bit, and then says, look at me, I'm a genius. I solved the problem.
Walmart comes out and says we're going to have to raise prices because of the tariffs. Donald Trump loses his shit. How dare you do that and and say the tariffs are causing the higher prices, which is true. They are causing the higher prices. So he gets on the phone to Walmart. He tells us they're backing down and they're going to eat the tariffs. I want to see that before I listen to Donald Trump telling us that. And the fact of the matter is, it's not just Walmart. Every retail outlet, every small business that will go out of business because of this. This is all going to have an impact. You can try to shut up Walmart, but what's going to happen to the economy is going to happen. It's too late to fucking save it. Pulling back on the tariffs, too late. Too fucking late. There is going to be a lot of problems here, and then Donald Trump's going to have to try to spin it off. Are you going to blame it on the guy with terminal prostate cancer? That ain't going to work. Who's going to take the blame? And this has got to be troublesome for Donald Trump.
Oh, he's going to try to blame Biden. If that doesn't work, he's going to blame what is it? Is it Treasury Secretary Besant? I think
Yeah.
he'll try to blame him, or he'll try to blame
The Fed
whoever.
chair.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He'll try to blame Jerome Powell, JD Vance. He'll throw anybody under the bus so he doesn't have to take the blame. Ultimately, it will be his fault, and at some point, there's going to be nobody else to blame. It's going to get left at his feet. Um, and us rational-minded people, we know that it's his fault. We know where the blame lies, but he's going to be desperate. He's going to twist around and shake around until he finds somebody to blame. But it's not going to be good, not at all.
We're getting to
The
the
crash
point.
is coming.
Well, that's it. And we were talking about this a long time ago. Um, when Donald Trump was elected, we thought, well, it's going to get bad. The Republicans are going to push back, and it's just not going to work for the economy or anything else. And eventually, the Republicans will realize this is going to kill them in the midterms. However, this has taken a lot longer for them to wake the fuck up and smell the coffee. And now I'm afraid the only way this he gets the pushback is a cataclysmic economic disaster, which is still on the fucking table for us.
Well, I think he's still going to get pushback. I just think it's not close enough to the election yet that the Republicans are backing off because Donald Trump's back the tariffs back again. And they're thinking that well, okay, we got him to back down a little bit. Things are going to level off. It's going to go back to normal, and we can ride this closer to the election before we have to do anything.
There'll be
They're
a
not
lot of
dealing
catching
with,
up.
yeah, but they think they can still fix it between now and the election. I think what's going to happen is it's going to, when it finally catches them in the ass and shelves are empty and things like that, once they realize how bad the economic thing is, they don't realize how long it will take to recover from it. And by then, them doing something against Donald Trump won't be enough to save them in their election bids.
I find it interesting that they think they can fix it. They should look at their track record. These motherfuckers can't fix breakfast, let alone fix the economy or fix anything that they've broken up to this point.
Well, they're convinced their policies are the right way to go. They don't they don't want to admit that their stuff doesn't work. I mean, we're still 40 years after Reagan, we're still hearing about trickle down economics.
Yeah.
We can show them study after study after study and proof after proof after proof where trickle down doesn't work and it never has. And they still say, well, trickle down will work. You put the money in the hands of the job creators.
Yeah. Or they
So,
say if we tax them, they'll leave the country. Okay, see ya. You're fucking
yeah,
bleeding us dry. If you go elsewhere, then you won't be bleeding us dry anymore. Um, Somebody will pick up the slack. Somebody will replace you ultimately. It'll take a long time. It'll be a fucking mess, but it will be a mess for them too. So the idea that they're all going to pick up and leave the country, I find that hard to believe. That's a lot of money to do that sort of thing, and I just can't imagine them that many people leaving the country. The thing about it is with the Republicans, it's not about the country. It's not about the people in the country. What we found out, both Democrats and Republicans, the single most important reason they go to work and do the things they do is to protect their job, which is contrary to what their job is, and that's serving us and serving the government. So the Republicans will always stick by trickle down because their supporters are the oligarchs, and the oligarchs control the strings on Congress on the Republican side. And as long as they keep the oligarchs happy, then the oligarchs keep putting money in their pockets, and it's just all about self enrichment. It has nothing to do with running the country or making the country better. So we get back to the other thing we've talked about many times is how much money plays a role in government. And that's one of the things that has to be wiped away because this government is this government from top to bottom is essentially corrupt. And it was probably corrupt before Trump got in. I know it was corrupt before Trump got in. He's just bringing everything up to the surface so we can fucking see it. A lot of this stuff has been around for decades.
Well, yeah. Um, like we talked about a while back, they passed the infrastructure bill under Biden. First time they passed infrastructure in 50 fucking years. You're telling me they never had a plan to pass it? Why couldn't they pass infrastructure in 50 years?
Yeah,
You got people like uh, Nancy Pelosi making millions in stock trades. You're telling me she didn't have insider trading knowledge, but you or I do it, we're going to jail.
right.
It's the whole thing. There's too much money in politics. They find ways to, uh, whether it's campaign contributions, lobbying, whatever. It's all ridiculous, and it does need to stop. Ever since Citizens United, I think was the name of the case, where they
Yeah,
determined that corporations are people, and well, companies can spend their money for political purposes, and now they can just dump as much money as they want into campaigns.
right.
They need to get the money out of politics. They need to uh, put a lot more ethic controls in place, and hell, maybe put in some kind of a recall vote for senators and representatives for when they fuck up that we can call at the state level for a recall so we can kick them out of Congress. But none of that's going to happen because the people that would have to vote it all in would be voting against their own interests, so they don't want to do any of that.
Years ago when Donald Trump entered office the first time, I said, this is before I was really talking about politics, just my guess, that he would destroy the Republican Party. And he's pretty much done that. The Republican Party bears no resemblance to what it once was. I also said if he's allowed to do it long enough, he might tear down the whole fucking system. And I said that would be very hard and very tough, but may not be a bad idea. And now when we see people like David Hogg with the primaries and stuff, I'm almost thinking the entire system does have to be torn down to a certain extent. Because as much as we hate the Republicans and they are the dumpster fire, we've got so many problems on the Democratic side too. We need a huge shakeup to at least get back on track in this country.
Yeah, we do. We gotta figure out some way of um, getting the Democrats back to where they used to be.
Yeah.
Um, they're not. They're just more go along to get along. They got some priorities, sure. A lot of it's just block what the Republicans want to do. Republicans want to block what Democrats are trying to do and go backward. Um, we need somebody in there that's willing to put in the work, but we also need to get back to a point when we could reach across the aisle.
Yeah.
There
I mean,
we
that's the
got
point of Congress.
yeah. It should never be one party pushing everything across the line, no matter which party's in control. It used to be a thing where you would be able to say to the Republican, if you were a Democrat, look, you don't agree with this, I don't agree with that. You vote for my thing, I vote for your thing, handshake deal, or you put them both in the same bill and they both vote for it and it passes and you know you might not always agree on everything, but you can get things done. That's gone. And that started under Obama, not
Yeah,
because
it
of
did.
anything Obama did, but because Republicans were so appalled that we had the audacity to elect a black man as president that they were bound and determined to block everything each that
Well,
bipartisanship has left. And
well, they,
it
The Republicans didn't want a black president to look good or accomplish anything. And
No,
I
they
don't care
didn't.
what anybody says, that's fucking flat out racism. And that's what the Republican Party stands for. They stand for racism. I know people will come to me and argue with me about that, but everything points to racism and sexism from the election to the way they run their business in Congress. I mean, let's talk about it. Let's grab all the brown people and send them out of the country, but let's bring some white Afrikaners from South Africa in and treat them like kings. They're doing to those white refugees exactly what they accused the government of doing with the brown people, which they weren't.
Yeah, and that's how they operate. And the Republican voter is cheering right along because they go, well, it's only about time that blah 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 blah. You hear the talking point. It's ridiculous. These Republicans, they say, well, we don't want anybody coming in here legally. Yet you always hear about them raiding places of business and employment, different job sites. They went in. Oh, he was taken out from his job, but yet they're illegals who just leech off society and they don't work. Which is it? You know,
Yeah.
it's just blatant racism. It's all it is.
Well, and it's capitalism to a certain extent too, because they're telling us that all these people from Mexico or South America are coming in. They're rapists. They're from insane asylums. They're burglars. They're all these horrible people, and they want to get the brown people out. Still, somehow we find out that Donald Trump had cut a deal with the Sinaloa cartel in Mexico and allowed the family of El Chapo to come into this country via Tijuana. Why do you think you'd let all these people connected to legitimate cartel people, legitimate terrorists? Why would he let them in the country? There's only one explanation. He got paid.
Money, yeah. And I'm sure it was for his illegal, under the table, not even under the table, over the table, uh, gold Trump immigration card thing that doesn't actually exist that he announced. I'm sure that was part of it. And he'll say, well, see, they paid us a big chunk of money to come in. So I made money for the country. It's okay.
Yeah, yeah, you made money for the country. Well, I heard Mike Johnson say something, and this is something that comes directly from Donald Trump. Somebody was asking Mike Johnson, well, you always complain about Biden's criminal family, but Donald Trump is doing this and doing this and doing this. How do you explain that? He said exactly what Donald Trump has said before. Yeah, well, Joe Biden was doing it under the cover of darkness, even though we don't have any evidence. But Donald Trump's doing it right out there in public. So it's cool, right? No, a fucking crime is a fucking crime, whether you hide it or you don't hide it. And this is their explanation. It's okay for Donald Trump to commit crimes because he's doing it in front of your face. We should be insulted by the audacity and the blatantness of what this fucking clown is doing, but the Republicans won't own that.
No, they won't. They are convinced that the American people, if they just keep doing the whataboutism, that the American people will be okay with it and that they will just accept it and move on. But they're only excusing it because they don't have any other options in their minds for how to get reelected, for how to revitalize their party. They know they're on the way out, and they think Donald Trump is the only thing that's going to keep them afloat at this point. And if they have options, if they think they've got an option, or they are convinced that breaking from him is the only way for them to save themselves, they will. But they're just convinced that we'll just accept it because they say, oh, it's okay. We'll let him police himself.
Yeah. One of the funniest things I've been watching on television, it's better than any sitcom. It's how these Trump administration officials are now sitting in Congress in the hearings and being asked questions. They have a difficult time answering any question. Like one guy was asked about what was it? God, I can't remember. Well, the good one was um, Director of Homeland Security, Christy Nome, was asked in a hearing, what is um, uh, habeas corpus? And she looked very seriously and she said, habeas corpus is a law in the Constitution that allows the president to deport people. And people laugh because it's so fucking ridiculous. Here's a woman who was a governor of a state, a shitty state, South Dakota. And when I say shitty state, the state's fine. The people that are in it are fine, but it's a tiny state in terms of numbers of people and who she represented. She wasn't even a good governor. But the fact of the matter is habeas corpus is very simply referencing due process, which is exactly the opposite of what Donald Trump and Kristi Noem and Tom Homan are offering to these people. Their explanation for it is, well, there's too many people. We can't send them all to trial. Well, first of all, it's not trial, it's a hearing. Second of all, too bad if it's too much. Slow it down a little bit. Habeas corpus is guaranteed to everyone in this country, citizen or not. And they say, well, no, it's just citizens. No, no, that's not what the Constitution says. It doesn't say citizens or doesn't identify what kind of people. And I love all these constitutional originalists now trying to explain that fucking away.
Yeah, and her not knowing what habeas corpus is just another sign of how they only hire the most incompetent people because the qualified people don't want to be attached to Donald Trump. They don't want to have that stink on them. Habeas corpus is the right to basically be before a judge and have proof of the reason why you are being confined. Why are you being held? That's effectively what it is. And they have to prove you've been charged with this, you're a danger to the society, whatever the case may be. Um, and her not knowing it, they're just trying to find a way to explain it away. And even then, Donald Trump can't just unilaterally wave it away. It's only been taken away 4 times in our country during major crises, one of which was the Civil War. And
Yeah. Yeah.
that was only in and around the areas where the fighting was actually taking place. Jesus Christ. These people are incompetent. They don't know what's going on. And that's because, like I said, nobody wants to be around Donald Trump because they don't want to be associated with him. All the good Republicans are trying to back away so they can maybe save their careers for after he's gone.
Well, good luck with that. None of them have backed off enough at this point. They still have the stink of Donald Trump on them. The other person that was in the hearing that I just remembered again, he was some corpulent fucking clown that is supposed to be the IRS director of the IRS, the next one. That's the one they're trying to get confirmed. And I think one of the reps, who was it? It doesn't matter, said, let me ask you this question. If Donald Trump, as president of the United States, directs the IRS to go investigate or indict people that aren't his friends that he doesn't like, is that illegal? It's a pretty easy question. Could not answer it. He would not answer it. He was asked 3 or 4 times the same question. Well, I can't answer that. Well, then why are you fucking even be considered as the IRS chief? Because that's a pretty simple law that is clearly illegal if Donald Trump would want to do something like that. But he doesn't want to say that because he's afraid he's going to make Donald Trump mad. Well, I'll tell this, no matter who works for Donald Trump, eventually you're going to piss him off. Eventually you're going to get fired or resign. So I don't even know why you want the motherfucking job.
Yeah, I don't know why he'd want that job either. And he obviously didn't want to give an answer because if he said that he would, well, then that he would prosecute anybody Trump said, there's a good chance he doesn't get confirmed. And if he doesn't answer it, or if he says he wouldn't do it, Trump would just rescind the nomination and he wouldn't get the job. He was caught. He couldn't answer either way. It's ridiculous. Obviously, it's illegal. You can't just have the IRS going after people. And they're not just supposed to be going after the current administration's political opponents. They're supposed to be looking out for people who haven't paid their taxes.
Right. Right. Well, and the other guy that's getting beat up pretty good is Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State and National Security. He got all kinds of jobs. He's got side hustles that's coming out the ass. But Marco Rubio was asked hard questions, and this goofball, who should be better because he was a former senator, or yeah, he was a senator, um, that he's just sitting there getting uh, attacked by Democrats for the stupid things he said and has done. And the guy sits there and then he gets mad, he gets angry, and then loses his temper. This fucker is just a clown. He has got to be one of the worst secretaries of states in the history of this country. He's do nothing. Fact is, all these people are do nothing. Their job isn't to run the Defense Department. Their job isn't to run the IRS. Their job isn't to be the Secretary of State. Their job is to be the fucking Bobo that takes orders from Donald Trump, and he makes the decisions in each of their departments. And that's why it gets so fucked up all the time. Donald Trump doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah. Instead of leaning on qualified people to do the jobs, none of them want to be around Donald Trump. So he's got to find anybody to fill the role. And then Donald Trump has got to make the decisions for all these things and tell him what to do. And Donald Trump just wants people around him to say, yes, sir, that's a great idea, sir. Why didn't anybody think of that before? That's all he
Yeah.
wants. I don't remember the name of the theory with it. There is something I learned in college way back. It says typically people get promoted to at least one level above their actual ability level,
Yeah.
usually. And once they realize they're in over their head, they start firing the people below them that are actually capable at doing their jobs. And they bring in yes men and yes women because they they want people around them that'll make them look good, not qualified, and who will agree with whatever they say. They don't want somebody embarrassing them underneath them. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what you have right now at the highest office in this country.
Well, and I think that was something that came out in the 60s or early 70s. It was a book or something, and they called it the Peter Principle, rising to the level of your own incompetence. And we've
That
got
could be
all
it.
kinds of examples of that in fucking in government today, in all kinds of uh, Democratic or Republican Party. Here's something else just came out. I wanted to bring it up, and it's about the Trump organization or the DOJ getting involved in elections. The DOJ has just been announced tonight. DOJ opens criminal investigation into Andrew Cuomo, who happens to be a Democrat, who happens to be running for the mayor of New York, I believe. And remember, the current mayor of New York has paid off Donald Trump and let him off the hook with his crimes and such. So apparently, Donald Trump and the DOJ want to give this clown, who should not get reelected, a hand by not going after New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. Now, that's not to say Cuomo doesn't have his issues, but it just seems very opportune that this investigation would happen now. If they did that to a Republican, they say that's not fair, not this close to election. But apparently for a Democrat, it's fine.
Oh yeah, it's always if it hurts them, it's okay. If it hurts me, it's too bad. It's a
Right.
bad thing. That's how they operate, and it's very blatant to anybody who's got a little bit of reasoning skills. What's going on here? Whatever Donald Trump did, or whatever Donald Trump gained from letting Mayor Adams out off of the criminal proceedings that was going on, now they're trying to help him keep his position because they clearly liked whatever they got the first time, whether it
Yeah.
was a campaign donation or whatever. I'm sure there's going to be a quid pro quo in there somewhere.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. There is nothing that Donald Trump does that isn't a quid pro quo. We talked about it on the live yesterday, talking about quid pro quos, and we talk about this plane situation with Qatar, the Qataran royal family, and how Donald Trump announces that they're going to make this wonderful gift to him. Then we find out, well, no, Donald Trump went to them and said, "Hey, how about giving us that fucking plane?" And he tried to cover it up by saying, "Oh, it's going to be Air Force One because the one we're building isn't going to be done in time." But of course, once the Air Force One plane is done, then we'll move it to my library. My contention is this. Prior to the election, we know Donald Trump has his own plane. It's very old. It's very shitty. It was sitting on a runway because he couldn't afford to fix it. So his plane is falling apart. He's trying to find a way to get a personal plane when he's no longer president or while he's president. He's trying to get a free plane. And then not only does he want the free plane, he wants the United States government to pay for the retrofitting and the fixing up of the plane. That is the essence of quid pro quo, because God knows what he's giving to Qatar, but we know that they finance terrorist groups like Hamas. It's just, I mean, it's so blatant, it's ridiculous.
Oh yeah, and it's out in the open. Donald Trump is trying to, gaslight us and saying that's not what we're seeing. It's not really what it is. Well, we're giving the Defense Department, but later the Defense Department is going to give it to me. But it's not what you think. It's not a gift to me directly. And it's going to take like $1 billion to fix this damn plane up, to get
Right.
it ready to go to be useful for Air Force One. It's going to take at least a year, if not two. You're talking 2027, which is when the next Air Force One plane is going to be ready anyway. So by the time it shows up, it might not even be needed. And then Donald Trump can say, well, I got the new one for Air Force One. I'm just going to gift it to my library and it's fine. Yeah, he wants it for himself. He's just trying to do things to enrich himself, his family, and he thinks he's clever. He thinks he's slick, but he's not. It's not even close to clever or slick. And I just don't understand how more people don't see it being what it is.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that with Donald Trump, he seems to have an affinity for uh, nominating and hiring people with criminal records, people like Peter Navarro and such. Um, but I heard this story, and what's interesting about it is, you know, he nominated Charles Kushner to be the U.S. ambassador to France. Now, Charles Kushner is Ivanka Trump's husband's father, who is a criminal in his own right, who Donald Trump pardoned. So now he nominated him to be the ambassador to France. The Senate voted tonight 51 to 45 to confirm this guy, to confirm this guy as the ambassador. And my question is, there's a lot of people talking some shit because Democratic Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey joined most Republicans in voting for Kushner's nomination. Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, the Republican, voted against him. What the fuck is Cory Booker doing? Jesus Christ, you know this is going to get out there. I mean, he was going to pass anyway because the Republicans have the majority. But Cory Booker got all this great accolades for this filibuster he did, and now he does something like this. What possible explanation could you have for voting for a convicted felon to be the ambassador of France?
That I have no idea, unless he's hoping that um, when Mr. Kushner goes over as the ambassador, he does something bad enough to embarrass Trump. Uh, I don't know, but yeah, it's out there. There's a lot of people talking shit about Cory Booker right now, and he was kind of gaining some notoriety
Yeah.
um, with that filibuster, and it looked like he was on the right track. And I know it's way early, but it was putting him at least in. I've seen a couple people talk about his idea, the idea of him maybe being in the contention for 28 as a potential presidential run. Now he pretty much shot that all to hell with one vote.
Why would Democrats continually do this to themselves? Now there is some talk that he is a friend of Kushner's. And that expose, because he's in New Jersey and Kushner's in Jersey or New York or something like that, and he's a real estate developer. They probably have some ties one way or another. But it just goes to show how incestuous our government is, that it's not just Republicans that have their hands in the fucking cookie jar. There are some people on the Democratic side as well that are just as untrustworthy. Now, I'm not saying Cory Booker is that person, but what is it about Democrats? Gavin Newsom, he seems like a strong candidate to be president. Then he does this podcast where he kind of caters to this Trump fuck. Now Cory Booker does a great thing with the filibuster, but he fucks it up. What is it with Democrats that they can't help themselves? They keep fucking themselves up.
I don't know. I don't know uh, if they're just not accepting the reality yet of where they're at, where everything's under a fucking microscope, and that people are now way more involved in politics than they used to be. In part because of people like you and me
Yeah.
out here shining a spotlight on some of this bullshit. Um, I don't know if that's it. I don't know if they think that, oh, well, it was only one vote. And I knew he was going to pass anyway, that he could maybe vote for his buddy and nobody would care. I don't
Yeah.
know. But they keep fucking themselves over. Gavin Newsom was a potential for president, but I think he's out now. Democrats got to have some kind of a closed door meeting, get their head on, pull their head out of their ass, figure out what they're going to do for 26 for the midterms, 28 for the presidential race, because they have the potential with the right messaging and the right people to have power for quite a while. But if they're not careful, they will grasp defeat from the jaws of victory.
I saw a quote from James Carville. I don't know how I feel about Carville. He says some stupid shit sometimes. He says some good stuff sometimes. But the bottom line is he was in politics with Clinton. He's a little out of his realm too. He makes some good points, but he said, and this surprised me, he said that he would support AOC for president. Now, I would have no problem with AOC running for president. I think she would do a good job. I think, for all intents and purposes, in spite of how many people there are in the Democratic Party, she is the face of the Democratic Party. She's the one that stands up and says what needs to be said. She's maybe more left than a lot of people would like, but she's one of the few people out there fighting. Tom Homan says you better watch out. You could get investigated. AOC says, "Fuck you. Come at me, bitch." And that's the kind of behavior we need from our Democrats, but there's only a few people doing it. Jasmine Crockett, she's too young in her job. I think she's older than AOC's, but she's been a rep for a much shorter time. I don't know what it's all going to come down to, but they better start figuring this shit out. I mean, if racism and sexism is a problem, AOC is a bad choice. But we're still 3 years away from it, so who the fuck knows?
Yeah, that's the thing I've been saying for quite a while. We've talked about it a lot. The Democrats have a bench of people they can go to. Now, some people have already disqualified themselves for one reason or another, thinking of Gavin Newsom. But other names have popped up that we hadn't talked about. AOC, John Ossoff out of Georgia, Bashir out of Kentucky could be an interesting run. Pritzker,
Yeah.
Kamala Harris running again. Tim Walz maybe being top of the ticket could have a chance. Shapiro, uh, Gretchen Whitmer from Michigan. There's a bunch of people, but who do the Republicans have? Republicans got nobody because nobody can capture the crowd like Trump. And that's going to be the thing. Democrats, though, have to get their messaging right. They have to figure out where they stand, which direction they want to go, and not handle all the infighting. And they got to figure it out because otherwise they're going to be just like they were the last time they ran Hillary, when they ran Kamala, and they're going to lose part of their voting base with the far left, the bros, and maybe not just them. that are going to refuse to vote for whoever they run if they don't get it figured out. Now, AOC may be able to bring in some of those farther left voters, but are they going to alienate the people in the middle? It's got to be. I don't know how they're going to do it, but they got to be working on it and getting it figured out. It's starting to shine a spotlight on the people they need to in order to win, because winning is what matters.
Unfortunately, I've said it before, I'll say it again. Based on what we saw on November 5th, you almost have to have a white guy running. And I'm sad to say that because AOC, Kamala Harris, any of them would be great presidents. But this country is just too racist and too sexist to give them a chance.
I think there were other. I still think there were other issues at play with the Kamala Harris campaign. A lot of it being, like we talked about earlier, her being hamstrung by the Biden administration
Yeah.
to where she couldn't create that separation. I don't know. I think if she had been given enough time to establish herself and separate herself from the Biden campaign, the fact that she was a woman and the fact that she was a woman of color probably wouldn't have mattered nearly as much as it did, because she didn't have enough time to separate herself from the administration. She wasn't able to create that. AOC might have a better chance because she's still treated like a political outsider, whereas like Hillary was treated like an insider. She was the establishment. AOC is not so much establishment. In fact, the establishment is against her. So I don't know. It's possible she could make a good run. I think she'd do great in the position. Democrats just got to figure it out and figure out which way they want to go and start pushing that person. I'd say sometime very shortly after the midterm election.
The thing about it is there's a lot of good reasons why AOC could be president and probably be pretty effective. But the thing, give me an idea how petty I am. The reason I would love to see AOC win the presidency, because fucking Republicans' head would explode. They'd forget about Barack Obama. They would go fucking absolutely nuts if AOC was elected president. They would be they wouldn't know what to do with themselves. They hate AOC. And to make it better, let's put Ilhan Omar as the VP. That'll drive them
Oh,
fucking nuts.
oh God, that would be
I don't
great.
I don't know if Ilhan was born in this country though, because if she wasn't, she could never be VP or president. But
Yeah, maybe what you could do, maybe that would also make their heads explode. And you could almost do the ticket either way around. AOC, Pete Buttigieg.
yeah, well, Pete sounds like he wants to run for president, and he probably would be a good president.
I think he could make a good. He could probably make a good run. He's actually doing fairly well of making a name for himself on Fox News and getting through to at least the talking heads on Fox.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he's kind of picking up where Bernie's leaving off, and I think it's a good idea. I mean, the loudest voice we have are AOC and Bernie's 85 fucking years old. I think Bernie's trying to hand the torch off to AOC, but there's got to be other people that can do what they've done. They're pulling big crowds, they're making a lot of noise, and that's what it's going to take for the Democrats to hope to win in 26 and 28. They got to start speaking up and not fucking up as much. You mentioned Gretchen Whitmer. She would be a good choice too until she fucking hugged Donald Trump and showed up at his little event in the Oval Office. Here's I've given this advice to Democrats before. Excuse me, I got this cold. But if you're going to be around a Republican, you better be attacking them. Otherwise, people are going to say you're complicit with them. So either stay away from them or go after them. That's your only choice. Otherwise, you're going to get your ass kicked.
Yeah, they haven't learned from one of the things we've talked about quite a bit when it came to Kamala Harris. One of the things I still think hurt her in the election was she was too close for the last several weeks of the campaign to Liz Cheney.
Yeah.
Everywhere they were there every together. They don't, even though we need to get back to that bipartisan idea, people do not want to see them be bipartisan right
No.
now. They want to see their side kick some ass. And they're convinced all Republicans are bad, which most of them are right now
Yeah.
because they're not coming out, they're not pushing back against Donald Trump, and the voices that were have been silenced and pushed out of the party or pushed to the sidelines. And that we don't want to see them with the Democrats right now. A lot of people don't. So
No.
they got to figure out what they're going to do. And like you said, quit fucking up and start focusing on winning, because the chance for them to win big in the midterms and win big in 28 is there. All they have to do is reach out and take it and not shoot themselves in the foot.
The only concern I have is I thought their opportunity to win with a woman was big in 2024. I thought it was huge. I thought it was a great time to have a woman running because you have the worst candidate in history running against them. Fucking wasn't enough. So you better take that to heart and make plans for 2026 and 2028 and do something fucking different at this point.
I think I think you're gonna see that, yeah. Their best chance to win up to now was in 24 against the worst candidate. However, I think you and I might end up agreeing after we see who runs in 28,
Yeah.
whoever they throw up there is probably going to be worse than Donald Trump as far as being a bad candidate, because no serious Republican is going to probably want to run. They're going to try to recapture the MAGA base as the next iteration of Donald Trump. They're going to be hamstrung by Donald Trump because they can't, if they embrace him too much, you know, he's going to be unpopular. But if they don't embrace him enough, he's going to sink them. I think
Yeah.
it's going to be interesting to see who the Republicans run. And this could almost be the worst candidate to ever run. It's whoever they run in 28, just because they're going to throw a name out there and it's not going to be anybody that they would ever hope to win.
Pete Hegseth in 2028. Yeah, it's
Don
going to be.
Jr.
Oh, I would love that. I would love to see that. The crazier, the better. That's always been productive for the Democrats when the crazy fucks end up running against them.
Better yet, a Don Jr. Eric Trump ticket.
That would be perfect. That would be perfect. And did you hear Don Jr. made an excellent point? I don't know if you heard this.
Oh God.
He he was talking about Joe Biden's prostate cancer, and he couldn't for the life of him understand how Dr. Jill Biden missed that. What a dumb motherfucker. She's not a medical doctor. How many times we got to fucking tell you that, you stupid son of a bitch?
Well,
It's
this is
ridiculous.
the same group of people, and I'm pretty sure Don Jr. was one of the people who kept saying, "Well, she shouldn't be able to put doctor in front of her name because she's not a medical doctor. She's got a doctorate in education." They said it
Yeah.
for like the first couple of years because they thought it was some big gotcha, and now suddenly they want to spin it around and go, "Well, see, she's a medical doctor." No, she's not. She's a doctor of education. And just because, even if she was a medical doctor, is that her area of specialty or what? Not every doctor is a specialist in everything. There's no guarantee she would have caught it anyway.
And here's the thing. He's the president of the United States. He's got the best doctors looking after him. The idea that he may have had cancer for 2 years leading up to the election, when he was saying he was going to run, is ridiculous. It's an aggressive form of prostate cancer, and that simply means it moves fast. There are people that get cancer and die within a month or 2 weeks. The idea that he had it for 2 or 3 years is ridiculous because if he did, it wouldn't have been aggressive cancer. Dumb fucks.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I really think if Joe Biden had known there was that big of a health concern, he wouldn't have thought about running again. He would
Oh
have
no, hell
actually
no.
stepped aside if he had a cancer diagnosis 2 years ago. If he did have it 2 years ago and didn't, and nobody told him, that's an entirely different story. But I think there's no way he had it and then still chose to run. that he just found out, like you said, it's aggressive, which means it showed up out of nowhere. It's moving quick. Hopefully, they've caught it in time. And I wish the best for Joe Biden.
Yeah, absolutely. But we have to understand he's 82 years old, and that plays a factor in how this all turns out. We hope for the best, but we've got to be ready for what may happen. Well, Eric, I'm going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I think my throat has finally hit its limit. I'm starting to cough now. And I don't want to subject people to more coughing than they have to deal with. But I thank you for coming on. I called you at the last minute, and I'm glad I did because it's been a while since we've talked, and I know people love to hear from you. Remind people where they can find you. If they haven't found you by now, I don't know why, but tell them how they can find you on YouTube and TikTok and elsewhere.
Well, thanks again for having me. I was glad I was free tonight. You can reach me on TikTok, YouTube at Analytical Iowan. I've got it spelled down below if you're watching the video version. Um, and I post if you find me anywhere, I've got a link tree up that links to almost everywhere else I am. I'm still working on getting my stuff consistently put up on some of the other social media platforms. Struggling staying ahead with it a little bit, but looking into getting out on more platforms as the need goes. But my two main ones right now are TikTok and YouTube.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for coming on. It's always a pleasure, and it's always a learning session for me, and I like to learn. There's plenty I need to learn, and you're a more detail oriented guy, so I get a lot of my info listening to you, whether it be here in the podcast or on your TikToks and YouTubes. Those of you listening, I want to thank you for taking the time to do that. Hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.